All right, guys, we almost made it. It's the penultimate presentation. So I'm going to talk about making Kubernetes functional with Pivotal Function Service. So Pivotal released a platform for running functions as a service on top of Kubernetes earlier this month, and I figured alpha release, let's do a live demo. So why do we want to do functions as a service? So infrastructure as a service provides us computing resources on demand. Kubernetes gives us container orchestration, which is cool, but I'm a developer. I don't want to write Docker files and build Docker images and do all that stuff. I want to focus on my code. So what Pivotal Function Service does is it allows me to write functions, push the code out, and PFS will build my Docker images. It'll scale my functions for me. It'll handle my runtime. It'll handle my routing. It'll do all that stuff. So PFS, I deal with the code. It uses these things called build packs. If you're familiar with the Pivotal Cloud platform as a service offering. It has an automatic scale to 0. So if my function is not being used, it'll put it to sleep. I can use HTTP or I can do event-driven functions, and I can run it on public and private clouds. So if you have a Kubernetes cluster, you can run it. It's also open source. So here's the architecture. At the bottom, you have your IaaS layer. It could be VMware, it could be Azure, GCP. Got Kubernetes on top. We use Istio for routing between containers. Knative is what actually builds our functions for us. And then Project Riff and Pivotal Function Service are what gives us the API on top of that. So let's do a demo. So I'm going to deploy some code real quick. This is a node project. So it's just a function. Can everybody see that? Make it a little bigger. So basically, I'm exporting a function that takes in a parameter, and then it calls this random words node library that I'm running, right? So how do we deploy this function? We run PFS function create. We give it where the code is stored, and then we tell it what Kubernetes repo that I want to deploy it to. So hopefully this will work. Create function. So what this is doing is it's taking my code, it's building a Docker image, and it's deploying a Docker container along with an Istio sidecar for routing. This is all happening in GKS. It'll take it a second. So you can see it's using, it realizes that I'm using Node.js, so it's using a Node.js build pack to build the function for me. And it's going to deploy my container to my Kubernetes, my GKE Docker repository. And we're calling this function Cloud Random 2. So while that's going, I'll show you how to actually invoke the function. So we do PFS service invoke and the name of the function, and then I'm passing it Cloud Austin. So that's completed successfully. Invoke function. So that's my output. So it's generating those 5 random words, and it says Cloud Austin. So I've successfully deployed a container out on my Kubernetes cluster, and I can show you that real quick. You can see this random words pod here. Oops. So I've got multiple containers. I've got a user container, a kubeproxy, and all I did was push my code with a simple command line interface. So this is really useful if you're running a private cloud. If you're doing public cloud, you know, I'd still recommend using Lambda or some other functions as a service like that. So I'm going to give you the slides and the source code to all this stuff. Are there any questions about PFS? There's no concept of a step function yet, but you can orchestrate function calls because it can do HTTP or basically responding to events. So you can wire functions together into an event pipeline, which will give you similar functionality to a step function. But this is alpha release. It'll go GA probably spring or something like that. I don't know.